Hello, and welcome to the How2Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. And now a moment for our sponsors. I want to highly recommend you get Acquisition Aficionado magazine. Every month, Acquisition Aficionado magazine brings you tactics for business buying and selling you won't find anywhere else. Learn firsthand from industry leaders who share their success stories, featuring in-depth interviews and stories from leading figures in the business acquisition industry. This multi-platform mobile magazine speaks to acquisition entrepreneurs wherever they are in the journey. And I want you to visit acquisitionaficionado.com today. Hello and welcome back to the How to Exit podcast. Today, I'm here with Daniel Sweet. Daniel is a managing partner at Sweetview Partners, where he leads a team buying and growing small Texas-based B2B companies. Welcome, Daniel. Thank you for being on the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I always like to start with kind of how did you get into the origin story? I kind of jokingly often say, you were born and now you ended up on a show about mergers and acquisitions. Could you fill out the gap in between? But can you kind of give us some ideas of how you got into this space?
Sure. So I actually started my life as a technology guy. I spent 27 years in the technology industry, so I've been through enough of the technology industry to have all sorts of things forced on me. So these are growth experiences. I started out. Actually, I worked Apple's help desk as my first real job. Before that, I was in high school doing work for everybody who had a computer problem, more or less. So started out hands-on, learning the computer stuff on my own. Went into a technology career, but always felt like more of an entrepreneurial kind of guy, trapped in a 10, 12, 20, 70,000 person company. And every time I left a job, I kept saying, no, I'm going to a small company now. No, I'm going to do a small company. And I never did. It turns out the money was too good. Golden handcuffs. So one thing I learned along the way, I had been forced into sales. So some of your listeners may not have been alive during the .com era. I got forced into sales because there weren't enough salespeople to do anything. I was delivering technology services, and not a lot of people knew how to talk about that. So they said, you do it. Turns out that was a great experience. So I went into sales management, ran some offices, opened some offices for some companies, that kind of thing. So I've done a lot of different things that really kind of scratched the entrepreneurial itch while I was still working for giant companies. And eventually I got down to the point where I was talking to some M&A guys at the mega global corp I was with at my last real job. And they were talking about what they did. And I said, well, that sounds cool. Could I do that with a small company? And he said, well, I mean, you could, but it would be a waste of our time. It takes about the same amount of time to do a small thing as a big thing. So I said, yeah, not for you, for me. Because I was familiar with a lot of, 3 or 5 person technology companies that, the person who started it would grow it up, make money, do whatever that did, and go, okay, well, I'm bored with that. That's over. Challenge gone. I'm going to just shut it down and move on. And so I started talking to some of those guys about taking over their companies. They could sell it to me. I could put somebody in place. I could put actual real sales people in place because they never had any of that, and grow them there. And that was kind of my retirement plan in formation. Unfortunately, the mega global corp decided that it was reorg time again. And so myself and several thousand of my closest friends all got an opportunity to try new things. But they had a really good severance plan, so that worked out well. So I jumped into doing larger businesses kind of on my own because I really loved it. It's, being a technical guy, you automatically have super ADD. It's all over the place. And doing this kind of work is like doing 87 different jobs at the same time. And it keeps the brain active and engaged, and none of it ever gets boring. And so, that's ultimately how I got into it. And it's just been great since I did.
So this is a beautiful space for that because there's a lot of different things to look at, a lot of things, moving parts. A lot of shiny objects, though, so you got to be
Mhm.
careful with some of that. Let's talk about like we had this conversation a little bit before the show, and we talked about this a little bit before in other programs where I've been around you. You and I have been in meetings before through some mentors and some other stuff, and but let's talk about that, like getting that first deal. That like how critical is getting nailing the first one right? Um,
So, I mean, I'll even cut off the word right. So, nailing the first deal
mhm.
is key to this whole thing. And it took me a while to figure out, but the reality is, if you are the perfect candidate to buy a business, and you haven't bought a business, you are a guy who wants to buy a business. And that, on the totem pole of the way people think about people, that's probably somewhere underground. The guy who wants to buy a business isn't that nice. Move it along. I worked at this, so I jumped full time and just started networking like crazy. And I would talk to all sorts of people about their businesses, about what I'm trying to do, and how it works together, and how it would fit. And a lot of people were like, "Hey, that's pretty cool. I know some people that may be willing to sell, all that kind of thing." They'd never come back until I bought my first business. When I bought my first business, then everybody said, "Oh, he really meant that. He's serious about that thing." Okay. And that's when people started coming back and saying, "Yeah, I know of another business if you're still buying." The first business puts you in a different category in a large portion of the population's mind. So that includes lenders, that includes investment partners, that includes other businesses. You are in a different category when you're a business owner versus when you are a wannabe. Um, I guess people have seen probably a lot of wannabes. I guess you and I probably have too. And there's a lot of enthusiasm but no real action. Getting over to that business owner world changes the way everybody thinks about you, and that makes all the difference. It's kind of like your first million, they say. Getting your first million is the hardest. After that, no big deal. Getting your first business is the hardest. After that, no big deal.
That's the nature of things. If you look at almost any information product or anything like that, you know, if they sell it to 100, actually, 50 or 60 will crack it open,
Yep.
right? And some of them just sitting, and I'm guilty of this a little bit. I've got some info products that I've bought in the real estate space anyway that still have cellophane on them on my shelf somewhere,
Yep.
right? I bought them because I might need them someday, and it wasn't that expensive. And if I always had this mentality: if I pull one tool out of that at the volume of business I'm doing that improves my business, it's worth the 2 grand,
Right.
right? So that said, I think the rule of thumb is right now it's like 97% of the people that take these courses do nothing with them,
Yeah.
right? And it was hard on me because I actually have an education company that I was involved with and ended up selling most of, or transferring most of it to a partner there. But we created
Didn't
a
sell it to me.
we had a real estate investment, like a thing called the REC Real Estate Investment Center that I helped create with a partner, and I would teach some of the classes and stuff. And it got to where I just kind of got disillusioned with the whole thing because people
Sure.
come through there, and I mean, I have friends who are performance coaches and everything. We'd stick them on them, and they still wouldn't get deals done. Right, even that friend who's a performance coach, this guy's trained on everything, NLP, cognitive behavior, you name it. He's had the training. If he can't get people to pull the trigger on something, nobody can. Right,
Right.
and just some people don't.
Well, so for a lot of people, getting the knowledge is scratching the itch. I mean, in the book industry, it used to be they would say roughly 30% of the books that get purchased get opened. Because having it, I mean, I could look at it if I wanted to. It's right there. It's mine now. It's not out here. Having it is half the battle, and for a lot of people, going through the coursework is a lot of the battle. We have a coaching company. We have a executive coaching and leadership development company for Fortune 2000 companies. And one of the constant struggles being a coach is if you actually care about your students, which is usually who becomes a coach. It's hard because your students are going to pay you. They'll even pay you lots of money to ignore you.
Oh,
You'll
yeah.
give them good advice, and they'll go, "Yeah, okay, I can't. I wish I could. I don't. I'll work on it." It never happens.
You know
Uh,
who? You know who Jay
yeah,
Conrad
yeah,
Levinston is, the guerrilla market. I was one of his coaches. I was actually
mhm,
a guerrilla marketing coach. I got my master's degree in marketing and realized that was worthless. Makes me a good employee for Coca Cola or something. So I went and got trained by him for my own purposes, like small. And that guerrilla marketing isn't the stunts and tactics. It's pretty much anything that's low cost, high impact.
right.
So I became one of his coaches, and I got really frustrated in the coaching industry because I call them ask holes, right? An ask hole is somebody asks you step by step on how to do something. You lay out a plan, and then they just don't do anything. They just go back to doing
Right.
what they want. And they call you up at some point and they go, "Hey, this isn't working." It's like, "Okay, did you do step number one?"
Well,
Well,
no, but it's still.
but okay, did you do step number two? No, I didn't get that far, but it ain't working. I was like, nah, it's working. You're not working, right? So we're out there. What is a way to get past that? What is a way to like set up a structure to get the first deal done?
So there's a couple ways to do this. If you are determined to be the majority owner and do it mostly on your own, what I tell people is the easiest way to do that is to be what people expect to see. So, for instance, my background was technology. The number one acquisition for me that was going to be easiest was going to be a technology acquisition. I've done this stuff for 27 years. If you're selling a technology company, I pretty much understand how that works. I understand how the market works. I understand how the sales work. I can notice things inside your company that tell me about it because I've been in enough companies to see that. And that's so for smaller businesses, like so we buy in the 1 to 20 million revenue range. Those people are expecting people like that. So an expert in the industry who's ready to own. The banks are expecting to fund somebody who is an expert in the industry, ready to do it on its own. I mean, they're this far away from having done it already, and it's just the next logical step. So if you have a background, a good background in something, whether or not you want to own a business in that something, that's still going to be your easiest path to get that first company. Funding, the easiest path is the SBA. Um, and I say easiest because they will do almost any deal that you're qualified for, and the price isn't stupid. Banks will be a lot more selective, but the purpose of the SBA, if you remember the purpose of the SBA, whenever you're working with them, is to employ more people. And all you're doing is you're functioning as an independent agent of the federal government spending government money. It's the only time you have to do that. Spending federal money in order to create a business, buy a business, employ people. That's their focus. So they're a little different than a bank that way. A bank is a little more selective, and you've got to go through a lot of banks. Not that you shouldn't, but you've got to go through a lot of banks to find their sweet spot because every lender will tell you, yeah, we lend on any project, but 90% of what we lended was this. Finding those sweet spots that map up with your the business you want to get is more difficult. But again, for speed of action, the SBA and a business that you have a background in are the quickest ways to get there. Now, the SBA is not quick in any other sense of the imagination. It takes them 90 days to work through the company and figure things out and ask for every paper they've ever touched. And it's very detailed. But, and there's lots of rules, but it is still the quickest way to get funded to do the deal as long as the deal is under $5 million.
So we've
Now,
had a few
second way,
people. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I said that was the first way. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
ADD. Did I say something before? The second way is to partner with somebody. And I always say this is my self-serving answer. If you partner with somebody who's already doing a deal and you buy equity into that deal, then you're an owner. And nobody comes and says, hey, what percentage do you own? So if you're a 1% owner in a amazing AI technology company, don't do that. They don't make any profit. Then you are an AI company owner. And that's how people will see you. They don't see you as the 1% guy. They see you as an owner guy. And all of a sudden, for a much smaller investment, and maybe in a much surer deal, if you're partnering with the right people, you get an inside view of what it looks like to do the acquisition and to live it out. And you also get to be an owner now, and you've jumped status. So it makes a huge difference to be able to do that. If you're willing to partner, a lot of people have a mental block. It's got to be my company. It's all mine. And I won't say I haven't thought that from time to time. But if you partner with somebody, that's another quick route to getting that first deal done.
And I'd say spend some time with anybody you're considering partner. I think partnerships are harder to manage and deal with than marriages because there's fewer anchors to hold you there to figure things out, right? You get
Right.
married, you end up having a couple of kids, you're highly motivated to figure things out. You buy a business with somebody, own a business with somebody, things are going rough and the money's just not coming in, it's pretty easy to tell the guy to take a hike unless you're absolutely in love with the market, the space, or this, the problem you're trying to solve. To
Right.
where you're there for a mission. If you're not, if you don't have a huge why you're there, it gets tough, right? So
Sure.
picking partners is great. I love the idea. I love the concept, but I've had some good ones and I've had some really rough ones. So you know,
Well, right. So, and it depends on why you're picking a partner. If you're picking a partner because you think that you two or three or eight or whoever can run the best killer lemonade stand business in the world, you're probably, especially the more partners you have, the more frustration you're going to have. But if your goal is to buy 1% into a deal so that you are a business owner now, if the company flops, you're out your 1%,
right?
which, you know,
Yeah.
on a deal like this is a pretty small number. But it will enable you to get to that next business that will be entirely yours.
So let's talk about brokers and advise. Do you go through brokers and advisors, or advise going through brokers and advisors, or do you prefer off market?
Short answer is yes. We use brokers to train our junior analysts on. So I used brokers a lot in the beginning, and I learned that brokers are a differently motivated third negotiating partner that makes everything harder. And they will often kill a deal because they're not making enough money on it. They would rather have everybody have nothing than they didn't make what they had in their mind.
Yeah.
It's been my experience. I'm sure I'm alone.
I
But
jokingly say that's why they're called brokers. You end up broker if you work with them.
exactly. But we do use brokers to train our junior analysts, which are generally think interns that we're training how to look at companies. And by using broker led deals, they get to see a ton of financials, a ton of companies, and learn to look at, learn what to look for in the P&L, learn what to look for in the balance sheet, learn the red flags of the lies that will be told on the Sims. They get a lot of at bats that way, and so it really helps them learn what to look for, so that when they're done with that junior analyst time, they have a better education than most MBAs on how to find a good company. As long as you ignore the broker part. And frankly, what we use them for is they're very low cost people who can grind through the hundreds of broker led deals to find those one or two good ones at a pay rate that makes sense. Because I can't do it for me, otherwise I won't be making any money ever. But if I've got a low paid person that's grinding through it and they get to learn at the same time, everybody wins. And we'll pick out those few, diamonds in the rough that are usually in there, and the broker didn't know how to market it, and so he didn't recognize what he had. Is usually how it works. But we can, having seen enough of them, we can kind of see through it and say, oh yeah, that one probably will work. So we do use them, but just in that sense. Generally speaking, so the success rate for using brokers, the standard that I've always heard is 1 out of 100 you look at can be done. Our numbers in the early days were more like 1 in 200 or 1 in 250.
Mm.
It was bad. So I stopped using brokers entirely until we started this junior analyst program. It was just such a waste of time. It didn't matter how good the company was. There was a high probability the broker would kill the deal.
I get brokers trying to be on the show constantly, and I do a lot of vetting to make sure they've owned a business. If you watch the brokers that have been on my show, they've bought a business, sold it, and then ended up being a broker because they didn't like the way they were treated.
Right.
They got hands-on experience. They just didn't show up. The early days, I had some friends that bought brokerages, and I brought them on or whatever. But you want to be on the show now, you got to show me you got some skin in the game, some experience or something, because there's just some states don't even, like Oklahoma, where I just moved from. There's no license requirement whatsoever to be a business broker. I mean,
There's
there's a lot
there's
of
no
states.
license required in most states.
Yeah, it's like, or you
Uh,
just have to be a real estate broker, right? Even here in
yeah.
California, to be a business broker, you have to be a real estate broker. But I don't know that there's an actual certification or extra test to label yourself as a business broker on top of it. I just don't think there is.
So there's the IBBB and all sorts of other places that you can get an industry cert, but I don't know of many state certs.
Right.
So the thing to remember about brokerage is this: the so brokers are just like insurance agencies. The top guy owns the agency. He owns the region. He owns the geography. The top person, excuse me. But the salespeople that he hires are almost entirely commission based, have never been in the industry, are thrown to the wolves to try and find something, and hopefully they make some money. They close 20-ish% of the deals on whole. Brokers as a whole close about 20% of the deals they list, which means there's a 8 out of 10 chance you ain't going to get listed. You ain't going to get sold. All of those factors tell you why there's a problem, because most people approach brokers like, hey, they're a professional in this industry. They know what they're doing. They wouldn't kill themselves to keep a deal from happening. But it turns out most of them have not been in it for more than a year. If you ask a broker, how long have you done this? The average answer is about 7 months that we've received. We started to keep track because it was interesting when we kept changing brokers on the same deal over and over. And they haven't learned enough to be a professional in the industry yet. It explains why it happens. But still, broker-led deals are a drug. Here's the answer. Broker-led deals are a drug because you can see a pretty picture of a pretty company that you could own because it's for sale. And you just think, all I have to do is make the right offer. And no. There's so much more negotiation to make all that happen that it's just a giant drug that I tell people not to imbibe on.
There are some good ones out there. Don't get me wrong. I just
For
actually
sure.
big announcement coming up. Not today, but we just partnered. We're a channel partner of IT based brokerage that's been around since the '80s,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they have buyers lined up. They coach people. I mean,
They're a real broker.
they've been around for a while. They know what they're doing. And I finally,
Yeah.
like when I found them, and they actually reached out to me. And at first, I was like, I'm not partnered up with no broker. And then I started researching what they do and who they were, and it's a huge difference when somebody they've been like I said they've been doing it since the '80s, like '87, '89 or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. All IT companies, all 5 million to the $30 million range,
Yes.
and they get them done, and they have buyers lined up. So they commonly get 10, 15 offers, and then they hone it down to 4 or 5, and then they
Mm-hmm.
work with those guys because they've built relationships with P&E firms, family offices, and tech buyers for years. And but we should be announcing that in the next few days or so. But
Well, if you've got a brokerage out there that specializes in a vertical and has been around for more than 5 years, chances are they're doing really well
yeah,
what they do.
yeah,
The problem is the majority of brokers are, we sell anything.
yeah,
Well, how do you know anything about that business?
yeah.
Because we sell anything.
Right.
Okay. There are great
Let's
brokers. They're just hard to find.
put the brokers aside. Let's talk about off market. What's the best way to find off market deals?
So the best way is also the way that is challenging for most people that are just entering. So
Hmm.
the best off-market deal you're going to get is from somebody you already know. Somebody who is somewhere in your network already, knows you, knows you're an honest person, knows that you're not fly by night, and has a business for sale that they want to go to. If not a relative, they would then want to go to somebody they trust. So the
Right.
best, easiest deal is one that's in your network already, and you just have to mine your network to ask people, "Hey, are you looking to sell? Do you know somebody's looking to sell?" That's always the best deal.
Do you do cold outreach and off market? Like you identify a highly targeted, like we want companies that match this criteria, and you reach out to them?
So honestly, not much. Certainly not much anymore. We did a lot of networking one on one to meet a lot of folks, but these days we don't do that much anymore because we're looking for and this sounds like what everybody should be doing, right? But we're looking for companies to qualify themselves and come to us. And so we have set up for me, a little bit of a persona on LinkedIn that talks about small business stuff.
Hmm.
We'll do presentations here and there. We'll do a podcast here and there. We'll do articles for magazines occasionally. We do a lot of things that display our expertise and hopefully are really helpful to that business owner who's looking to sell. And we've got a video series that's been in my head for a year and a half, and I've had no time to do that I'm going to do now.
Awesome.
Just little short videos that walk through the entire process with a seller, somebody who's considering selling a business, but they all say the same thing. I have no idea where to go. I look online, I get a bunch of trash. I have no idea who I can trust. So we're trying to put together a series of videos that at least walks through the process about the things they need to know if they're going to sell.
Are you going to do that
So,
in like an email drip, or how you gonna present it?
so we're going to have it. So we have everybody every couple of years has a brand new website. We just have a brand new website.
Okay.
So on our new website and on LinkedIn, we're going to be sending it out, and we
Mhm.
are working with. So we don't even have all the things I know I need to do. Don't beat me up, Mr. Marketing Man. Um, all the things I need to know we need to do, have the newsletter, have the email list, all that stuff. The honest truth is we've been too busy to get that done, which is a good reason not to do it. But it's still, as I'm building Sweetview partners to be able to handle more capacity, absolutely things we are going to be doing. Uh,
Awesome. What's the importance of having a highly targeted buying criteria, and do you guys have one?
our buying criteria is relatively simple. We buy in the state of Texas, 1 to 20 million in revenue. Except in technology, we like them to be have been around at least 10 years and have at least 10 employees. They need to be profitable. And we buy B2B generally, and our specialties are energy, technology, and construction. That's our specification because we know our success rate is much higher in that area. Um, the importance of it is twofold. One is it helps you focus because, like you're saying, there's lots of shiny things out there, and if you get distracted, as most entrepreneurs who are also ADD and easily distracted, um, there's too many companies out there to distract you if you're just thinking anything that's good. Having that helps keep you focused. And we use it with our junior analysts now is we've got a worksheet that says, here's a specification. And constantly, it's just like our own brain, which is why it makes me upset. It's just like our own brain. They'll come back and say, well, what about this one? I said, okay, is it this? Yes. Is it this? Yes. Is it this? No. It sounds like a no. And they say, but it's a great company. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's not what we do. We do this. So it really helps to focus your own brain. But equally importantly, everybody you talk to that you tell that you're buying businesses now, it helps them focus their brain too. Because if you tell them you're doing everything, I buy any kind of business, they're going to go, oh, that's nice. But if you tell them I buy left-handed cat emporia based in southern states with people who have been in their town for 3 generations, you can bet when they walk into the next left-handed cat emporium, they're going to say, I know a guy who wants to buy this very business. And they will remember you. It helps them to, everybody wants to categorize you so they know how better to think about you. And that's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. And so if you help them with that category, it keeps it in their mind. So they're now out becoming your salespeople effectively. So both for you and for people you talk to is important to have that deal specification down pat.
The deal specification I get, like, I know right now I'm looking for businesses that do $1 million to $10 million. I prefer things that either have a recurring revenue model or something I can add to it fairly simple,
Yep.
right? There's 10 or more employees. I don't want to buy myself a job. I understand and I acknowledge that I'll have to get in and get busy for the first while, but I want it to be up, running, and fairly operator independent. Like I don't need to be and I, be honest, most of the time I don't want the main operator to stay. Right, I'm
Right.
not a PE firm. I'm not gonna, I'm not doing that. Um, but I also want I want to know that you have somebody that's been there for 15 years. He's kind of the floor manager. He knows the business inside and out, and he could run it when you're gone. He's been running it when you're gone,
Right.
and not every company. I'm a big fan of this one. Not every company needs a CEO. That's an ego title. You need a
No.
good GM, a good general manager that knows where
Yes.
everything goes, know how the widgets are made, know who makes what when, where things are supposed to be, who's supposed to be there. You need all that, but you don't necessarily need a CEO level person for a company doing less than $5 million a year, right?
No.
You need
Totally
a
agree.
good operator, and that's one of the critical things I have right now. Is one of the questions I ask. You'll get it. We'll get to this point at some point. How do you pick great operators? Because been burned a few times, and I've tried. We just talked about this for half the last show I did, which is we do disc profiles and
Mm-hmm.
Clifton strings and other stuff, but there's just something about, and I've had some people that pass everything and have a good gut feel. The one thing I've never found a standardized test for is integrity, right?
Right.
Like you know do will they do what they say they're going to do? And I guess you get that from the calling their referrals and you're calling their references. But how critical is the people element when you're looking at companies? Like, what do you look at as far as culture, skill set? and team environment when you're looking at these companies you're acquiring?
So most of our companies, one way or another, the ones we acquire, because they're B2B, tend to be professional services of some sort. So what we're looking for are companies that are really kind of rock stars in what they do, and they've got good people who are extremely experienced in doing the thing and they love it, but they have no idea how to tell anybody else about it. So their delivery is fantastic. They have great repeat customers that keep coming back because it's so fantastic. But what they don't know is everything around that. So they know how to operate. They don't know how to sell, market. They don't know how to do the business admin. They don't know benefits. They don't know a lot of personnel issues. All of that stuff is just at this size usually missing from the companies that we acquire, and we love that because that's a great opportunity for us. So one of the first things we do, so we do generally replace the operator, the owner, and that's because our focus is to take something that's really great and grow it. So in order for that to happen, you have to do things like, I don't know, sales and marketing that the owner is necessarily uncomfortable doing, or he would have done them.
Right.
We have situations where the owner has stayed, and we made very clear, listen, we're going to do this kind of stuff. I am great with you staying, but we're going to make changes and we're going to do things differently, and you've got to be okay with that. And most of them, honestly, are not. I mean, they've done it their way for 20, 30 years. I get it. So
Yep.
usually we want to replace that person with somebody of our own choosing. Um, because we're relatively small as a acquisitions firm, it's usually somebody from our network or from their network that is who we choose. And so we've got a very close personal connection with them. And we do the assessments on them as well, and we interview them with a bunch of people. What I'm about to start doing is I'm about to, whenever I have a president I want to bring in, I'm going to have my other presidents interview them and say, okay, you know our culture, you know how we operate here, you know what I expect. Maybe he's telling me one thing and you another. I don't know. What do you think?
It's
So
a great
use
idea.
those
Yep.
guys to evaluate their peers effectively, and see if they fit because they know the culture.
That's a great idea. As I acquire, more than just a few, that would be a great way to do it. Just because they know the culture, they know the environment, and it gives that other the guy you're trying to bring in, they get a
Yep.
sense of confidence from it because they've talked to the other people that are working. Right. What's the so we talked a little bit about this already. What's the difficulty versus like I have the luxury of this is all I do. I get on the podcast and I look for businesses, right?
Right.
Some people are in a job and they're wanting to make the transition. How do you manage a part-time search? Because that seems like I don't know
That,
how you could do it.
that's hard, is what the
Right.
answer is. That is hard. So the way to do it is to have a meeting with your entire family, assuming you have people you live with that you care about. Both are good. Get them all together and say, okay, so here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to serve our future by buying a business or multiple businesses, but I have to start with one. Because I have a full time job, that means I'm going to be mostly a stranger for the next a minimum 6 months. If we want to do things together as a family, we need to pre plan them because otherwise they ain't going to happen. Because I am going to be working two full time jobs. It's hard. The problem is that you've got to interact with a lot of people in order to find, kiss a lot of frogs to find your prince. You've got to go through a lot of businesses before you find it's not just a business ready to sell. It's in the right industry, has the right attitude, is willing to sell at a reasonable valuation, has the motivation to complete a sale, which is a huge thing that most people miss. Is appreciates you as a buyer, which is a big piece, and can see his way through the entire deal.
I'll add
Finding
one to that
that
one.
is hard.
I'll add one to that because they
Yeah,
know what they're doing next. There's
yeah.
so many deals that get killed at the last second, and I've seen this over again. I've talked to like I'm on track to interview over 100 people this year in the
Mm.
space, probably in the 70s right now. I'll hit 100 easily this year, and one of the common elements is these deals fall apart at the last second. When I dig into why, is they tie so much of their identity to being a business owner and being the guy who produces XYZ widgets they don't know who they would be without it. And at the last second, they're just like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with myself, right? I
Yep.
actually have a company in Tulsa I really, was interested in. The A friend knows him. I know the owner. A friend knows the owner and knows the owner's family really well. Goes to dinner with them stuff, and he says, the wife's really pushing. They're in their late 70s. And the wife's really pushing for him to sell, and they built a 750,000, which is huge in Oklahoma,
Yeah.
lake house over one of the beautiful lakes there. And the wife just wants to go spend time at the lake with him and don't want him working anymore. So I get him on the phone, and because she's wanting to sell it, and he's there, and he's been a business broker before in the past, so it's a little difficult conversation. But
Sure.
the first thing he said to me is, "I don't want to sell this. I'll die. All my
Yep.
friends that sold their business at this age, they die within a few months. I'm not ready to die." Like, his whole identity, his sense of purpose. He has to live because he has a company and all those employees count on him. He's tied his who he is so much to it. I don't know that he has I mean, until he breaks that mental block, I don't know if he has a choice of leaving because he's convinced
Yep.
himself that when he's done, right? So you've got people who can make it all the way through the process. They know what they're going to do next. What's the first conversation? What does that first conversation look like for you when you get somebody on the phone? They're talking to you. Maybe they reached out to you, or maybe you knew they're in this space. They're 55, 60. They're thinking about doing something else. Somebody makes an introduction. How do you? What's that first conversation with a business owner in your book? What does that look like?
So related to what you're talking about, one of the first, maybe not the first, but one of the first questions I'll ask is, why is now the time to sell? And listen to what the answer is. The real answers, the honest to goodness answers that get to closings, are usually an external factor has acted upon this person.
Yep.
Their health, their family's health, their kid has gone crazy. They have a new grandkid they want to spend time with. Their spouse is about to leave them because they haven't spent time with them in 40 years. Whatever. There's an external factor that is acting upon them that is causing them to make that change because, like you say, it's very painful for them. So I listen for why they're selling as one of the first questions because you may have the best business and I may want to acquire it and you may only want 36 cents for it. But if you're not truly ready to sell, it'll never happen. I can go through the whole process and you're going to drop out.
And that's very time consuming. You can spend 6 months working with somebody, and at the
Oh,
very
yeah.
last second, they're like, "Yeah, I don't think I want to let this go yet."
In my mind, as the seller, it's worth X and you're at half of X or less or whatever it is. And we completely understand that it's their business, and so we'll very friendlily we will kindly disengage with them and say, listen, I get that. Our valuation is just based on how we know we can make a profit with it. There are lots of other valuations out there, and I hope you find the one you're looking for. If not, give us a call back, whatever. So we'll frequently walk away because we can see it's not going to come together. And they frequently need some more time to think about these new concepts. Sometimes they need time to be beat up by the market and see that we're just not lying to them. Oh, this is a market reality,
Right.
and then come back later.
It's interesting is I do the same approach when I'm talking to these guys, and one of the things I do, a lot of times that conversation of what they want, I don't bring it up very early in the conversation. It's usually the second or third call, but if it
Mm-hmm.
does come up early, it's my initial response. No, I don't care if I don't know have enough. I don't have enough data at this point most of the time,
Right.
so I don't care if they tell me it's worth they want $1 or they want $100 million. I'm like, great, let's see how we can get you there, and that's all I say. Like, great, let's
Yep.
see how we can get you there.
Yeah.
And the purpose of that is often getting you there is like, hey, look, I know that you asked for $100 million. Your company, like, I could only, in my mathematical, what I can do, I can only go to 10. How
Right.
I would get you there is you got to do this to your revenue. You got to do this to your system operating procedures. This is what you got to do. You get all that done, and myself or somebody else might move that number way up there where you want it,
Sure.
right? There might be somebody out there crazy enough, and I don't use that word, but there might be
No.
somebody out there creative enough that they're going to give you what you're looking for. It's just not me.
Exactly.
Here's a plan to get you there. Have a good, good luck. But it's not until after I've seen the numbers, I've got the data, and like
Right. Yeah.
a lot of times I'm like, well, why do you base your, there's a discussion like, why do you base your numbers off of this? And they're like, okay, here's the industry standards. Here's where you're at. You know,
We actually call and do the same.
yeah,
We'll call them up and say, hey, listen, we really liked your company. You have a very well operated company there.
hmm
We really like it. I wanted to see if you had sold it yet, or what the status was. Has the business changed at all? Is now a good time to have a conversation on that? We just like your company and wanted to talk more.
let's talk about the conversation. Do you spend much time building rapport at the beginning, or you because to me this is a business person. This guy needs to know me, like me, and trust me, and I get there as fast as possible. But just asking questions and doing my best to listen. And quite honestly, I don't try to ask for financials, or if they offer them, I look at them, but I
Mhm.
don't get into that stuff until I have your origin story, know why you created what you created, knowing where you're going. What's your vision for this? If you had unlimited resources, what would you fix? To just really get into their story and why they're going where they're going, because there's so much value in that. And if we get into numbers beforehand, it just kills a lot of that conversation,
Yeah,
and it all becomes like I just don't think negotiating based off of numbers is. And you've done a lot more deals than I have. I'm just getting started in this. I feel that negotiating off of numbers is a deficit. You're starting in the hole. You don't have the rapport. You're basically shooting yourself in a foot.
I did a negotiation class
Hmm.
recently,
Hmm.
and part of my commentary there was, if I don't know you and you don't know me, money is the only common element that we can use to do this deal. But once we get to know each other, we can then learn the things of value. I mean, maybe the deal could be done with three pigs and a chicken, in which case I'll go find three pigs and a chicken. But I've got to know you and what you value in order to replace money with something else. And so, and that's so my first conversations, what I tell my staff is what I do is color commentary. The numbers tell one story, but the discussion with the seller tells it fills in all of those numbers with the color, right?
Right.
So I'll find out, it seems like you got a really cool business here. Tell me, how'd you get into this? How'd you build it? What's the coolest stuff you've done? What are you proudest of? Why is now the time to leave? All of those questions around, tell me the story of your business. Numbers are great. We both have numbers people that will look at that. But I want to know, tell me more. Tell me the humanity. Um, and so that's the discussion I like to have, which inevitably leads to they learn who I am. And I'm too old and too long in corporate America to be fake about who I am. So you're good, like you're saying. You may not like my directness, but that's the way I am, and that's the way I'm going to be. So if you don't like that, you shouldn't sell to me.
Exactly.
And if they don't, they won't. If they don't
Yeah.
like you, they won't sell to you.
You're talking about like when there's numbers, you're only negotiating off numbers. I honestly think there's an extra element inside of that, right? If we're only negotiating numbers, if I don't like you, it's going to cost you more, right?
Right.
Or if I dislike you, it's going to cost you a lot more, right?
Exactly.
I've been even on job interviews where like I don't want this freaking job, and but I'm a consultant back then, and one of the guys asked me one day, like I went to this consulting gig, and they're like, well, how much? Like they wanted me to write documents for the next few months, and I'm an ADD guy. I don't want to sit to write security documents like
Right.
operating manuals and stuff for computer security stuff. I'm a
Hmm.
nerd from a previous life, and I was like, $200 an hour, and I okay, when can you start? I was like, that was too easy, right?
Yeah. I
Here
did
I
not go
am.
high enough.
I'm making $8,000 a week writing documents. I got it done,
Right.
and but the point was is and they needed it because they were entering into another country, and that country had to have certain things for security compliance operating.
Hmm.
In the United States, safe harbor is a totally different thing. In Europe, it just means it's the exchange of personal information and how it's managed and stuff. Here, it's something
Right.
to do with like adult material or something. But in Europe, it's about. So I was writing the computer security manual, operating procedures and stuff to prove that they had a secure and safe system. And I was a computer security expert prior to that, designing firewalls for government agencies and stuff. And so kind of knew the space inside and out. Learned a few things. We had to fix a few things along the way because I wanted everything in the document to be true. But
Right.
you know, by the end of writing that document, the last day when I finished it, I finished the document and they said, "Okay, you're done." And they got me up and walked me out of there because they realized how much they'd spent to write the document. But I didn't want to do it, right?
Yep.
So, but that said, if you're negotiating based off of numbers alone, you're probably not going to get there because the numbers just aren't going to make sense. You haven't
Hmm.
built a rapport, and they don't trust you, know you, want to hand it over to you, so they're gonna need a premium, right?
Right.
Especially there's an element inside of these businesses that are run by the original founder and who's been around, or second or third generation founders, called a safe pair of hands,
Hmm.
right? The loyalty of to their employees, and a safe pair of hands to hand that brand, that they built, what their dad built, what their granddad built, and those employees that worked there, their dad worked there. Like there's a the human element to this that a lot of people overlook.
Absolutely, absolutely. And part of our we, we have our discussion of what we do when we back up with facts and our history when we've taken care of people. But part of what we do now that we've gotten to a certain size is we'll come into a company. We say, listen, we know that a business is based on your work. And frankly, I'm too lazy to go around and hire a bunch of more people because I pissed you off. So
Hmm.
I don't have any desire to be doing that. So instead, what we do now is we bring in a really nice benefits plan that we put across the entire portfolio.
Hmm.
And we tell them, okay, we're going to bring in these benefits. They're really good benefits. The price is really good, but we pay for the employee. We pay for every employee the full rate. And if you want to add your family, it's relatively inexpensive. But we want to provide you a full set of really good benefits because we know that's a big part of making you want to stay. And I will be completely transparent. I want you to stay. And so we talk through this with the employees and help them understand what we're looking to do and why that benefits them.
It's interesting that you say that because I was talking to the wife. My wife still works, and she usually when we move anywhere, we move around a little bit. We're in the redwood forest of California right now.
Mhm.
When we get somewhere, we start looking around and say who has the best benefits, and that's who
Right?
we try to get her employed with. And here, like the difference, she found an employer that did exactly what you're talking about. Right? They cover everything. The difference was our medical insurance and benefits in Oklahoma with her working took about 700, almost $800 a month out of her check, and here it's $75. It's like
Yep.
with better coverage and better insurance and like the whole nine. Everything's better about what it is. It's a higher quality package of benefits, and instead of nearly $800, it's like 78, I think is what the number is right now. And so I was telling her, it's like, I'm one acquisition away that we can just replace that. You don't have to work, right? I'm just, most of my assets right now in real estate, so there's some ebb and flow with it right now. So it is comfortable that you know we structured our life to where I paid cash for the house, I paid cash for my farm. We don't actually have any bills, so it's like if everything else went to hell in a handbasket, we could live on her paycheck.
Right.
um, you know that may not be necessary. Like, I still wouldn't leave this. The benefits, she just logical. She goes, it's worth 40 hours a week to not have to pay 4 or 5. If we did this on one of your companies, as small as they are, it'd probably cost us 4 or 5 grand a month as independent operators, as opposed to like we did the math. We actually looked a little bit. Like 3,200 is the best I could find for having a family of
Hmm.
4 insured at that level. It's like it just makes sense. Plus, I kind of like being away and doing. It gives her a sense of purpose too. So,
Sure.
yeah, it's critical that the benefits packages are great because that's how you keep the team around and stuff. So I like that. So,
So if you're ready to sell me the podcast, you can become an employee and we can get you great benefits. See?
yeah. So the it's cool. Um, just talk about your company real quick. The Sweetwater. I'm gonna
Sweetview,
mess.
Sweetview Partners.
Sweetview. I
Yep.
keep wanting to call it Sweetwater. I don't know why. Is
Everybody
that a
does. I
name?
know.
Is it a song or something? Sweetwater. Sweetview Partners,
Sweetwater
right?
is a place in both Oklahoma and Texas, and it's been in a lot of movies and books. And yeah,
Well, Stillwater's in Oklahoma, so maybe that like there. I don't know if there might be a Sweetwater too. I don't remember that, but let's talk about that. Let's talk about your company a little bit. Like, how do people reach out to you? What are you looking for? I We've been on here for an hour a little bit, so I don't want to cut you off anytime, but you might have other stuff to do. So let's make sure people know, you know, what Sweetview is looking for, how to reach out to you. Uh, um, Give us a pitch. It's 100% okay on this show to pitch something.
absolutely. So Sweetview Partners, as we talked about, is looking for Texas-based small businesses in the $1 to $20 million range. We are generically business to business, specifically construction, energy, and technology businesses. And what we do, there's a lot of places to pick to sell your business to. But the reason people pick us is because we are going to maintain the name, we are going to maintain the people, except in one case with one employee where the owner recommended, maybe you want to get rid of
Unless
this
you tell
person.
us otherwise.
Yeah. Um, we maintain the people, and what we're doing is we're building around the edges to grow that.
Mhm.
So our job is to take it from what you have built, which is usually really high quality, and take it to the next stage where it can survive on its own. It becomes its own organism at that level. At that point, this thing that you built with the name you gave it, and probably most of the core people still there, is able to survive on its own without the day-to-day involvement of a president or an owner. And that's our goal, is to take your thing that can't survive without you right now and turn it into something that survives on its own and can keep growing with the pieces that we've put in there. We will add on compatible businesses. We'll grow sales. We'll help your employees, like I said, with benefits. We'll often come in and offer key employees a chance to buy into the equity, to get really connected with the company. And we are, because most of our stuff is professional services, we understand how important the people are, so we treat them right. That's what we do.
Awesome. How do people reach out to you? I mean, what's the best way to contact you?
Best way to find us is via the website, sweetviewpartners.com. There's a contact us section there. You can either just send us an email or you can actually schedule with one of us there. That's the easiest way to get hold of us. And frankly, I'm a little bit of a ADD workaholic, perhaps. So I'm usually in a meeting somewhere. So if you call me, you're going to end up leaving a voicemail anyway. So you might as well leave email.
Right. So, you guys looking for any teammates or anything like that also, or
So we're always looking for really good people. So, we always need new presidents.
mhm.
And so we're always looking for really good, qualified people who, again, my idea of qualified is you are high character. You have had the responsibility of at least a P&L in a larger company. And you're looking to take all the skills you've built over your entire life and start to deploy them in a place where you're making the decisions. Uh, you can do it. There's all sorts of stuff you proposed to your companies before, and you just need the right opportunity. And in doing that, we partner with our presidents to create milestones to get them equity in the company, so that everybody wins. When they win, everybody wins. So we're always looking for really good quality in Texas people.
Awesome. And I love that model, because that's kind of where I'm at with the same thing. Is I'm looking to bring people in that are, you know, they've done it before. They're, would be an excellent leader inside of that space. They might even be out there looking for a business to buy of their own and just don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to negotiate. This
Yep.
gives them an opportunity to come in, own a piece, earn a bigger piece over time, and eventually, I do plan on holding some of these long term, but some of these companies, I'd be interested in working with one of these particular operators. I'll go out and negotiate it. We buy it together. We grow it. You eventually buy it out of underneath me at a decent, I make my money, and then it's yours, right?
Right.
I'm working with two guys right now that's what we're looking at. It's part of the
Cool.
retirement plan. We're retiring them out of government services, and so I'm out talking to companies they might be interested in, and
Neat.
potentially a third. So that's fun, right? Like I'll go out, I'll find it, I'll negotiate it, we'll do it together, we'll own a big chunk of it together, and over time, you buy me out, and it's yours. Or I bought, if you decide you don't something you don't want, I'm buying you out, because I'm not going to negotiate anything for you that I wouldn't want to own, right? So,
Or frankly, we sell it and we both take the money and
right,
live on Fiji
right. So it's not a bad idea.
or in the redwoods.
That's where I'm at now. But okay, I appreciate everything. We're at the time then. I just like we were talking about this earlier on the last show. Is there's this park or this arc effect where you're at the peak of this conversation, it's getting good, and then you're out of time.
Yeah.
So might be a concept where I take these shows a little longer and just like let it ride and just tell people like we're going to talk until it starts to slow down, and then we're going to cut it off. But
Like it.
as of right now, we're scheduled for an hour and four. So I do appreciate you being here. Hang out for just a second afterwards. And for you guys listening, that's the show, man. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's your host, Ronald Skelton. I want to thank you personally for watching the show today and invite you to call our new hotline, 918-641-4150. That's 918-641-4150. Call us and tell us about our show, ask questions, suggest a guest, or even tell me about a business you have for sale, and we'll reach back out to you. Again, that number is 918 641 4150. Call our hotline and leave us some information. Thank you. I want to announce our new channel partners, the ITX Marketplace. Since 1998, ITX has created $5 billion in value by selling more than 225 IT businesses in 20 countries. ITX works exclusively with IT-enabled businesses generating between 5 million and 30 million who are ready to be sold, and M&A decision makers who are ready to buy. For over 25 years, ITX has developed industry knowledge that helps determine whether a seller is a good fit for their buyers before making the match. ITX Mergers and Acquisition Marketplace we have partnered with has a proprietary database of 50,000 plus global buyers seeking IT service firms, managed service providers, Microsoft service providers, software as a service platforms, and channel partners with Microsoft, Oracle, ServiceNow, and the Salesforce space. If you have an IT-enabled business you're ready to sell, I want you to visit the itexchangenet.com/marketplace, how to exit. That link will be in the show notes. Visit them now. The Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind. The Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind combines the traditional peer-to-peer mastermind introduced first in Napoleon Hill's famous book, Think and Grow Rich, with accountability partnering, where your peers help you ensure that you set goals, take actions, and get results. If you want to scale, blow past roadblocks, and achieve success faster than you might think is possible, I suggest you take a visit over to tiepm.com. That's tiepm.com and check out the Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind.